Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be replacing a strut assembly. Vehicle specific, this is a little work on a 2002 to 2006 Toyota Camry, but it should be pretty general for most vehicles. So I'm going to be replacing a strut assembly. It's called a strut assembly because it has the spring attached with the strut. So it saves me the work of removing the end nut here, compressing the spring first, then removing the end nut, taking the spring off, placing it on the new strut, and then placing the nut back on, and then releasing the spring. It's pretty dangerous work with the compression of this spring, and it just makes it a lot simpler. You have a new one. So I'm going to be replacing it on the rear, but here in the front I want you to notice the strut mounts are easily accessible underneath the hood, and this will be the case in most vehicles. The front strut mounts will be accessible under the hood, and on this car it has strut assembly on the front and the back. So I move to the back here. I already have my tools laid out. What you want to do is you want to jack up the vehicle, and you can use the jack that comes with your vehicle, or you can use any other jack that you may have. But it's important that when you jack it up, you have a system in place to support the vehicle in case the jack fails. You can have lumber or you can have jack stands. Lumber was closer for me, so that's what I used. So right here I just have a flat screwdriver. I have some impacts. They're small impacts. I'm not going to use them to break any bolts free or firmly tighten any bolts, but I'll use them in spinning them on and off. I have a bottle jack. This is not something you need. It's handy to have if you have it, but a second person to give you a hand every now and again would be sufficient. Of course, a hammer, Allen wrench, miscellaneous crescent wrenches, and sockets. So I've already taken the hubcap and the lug bolts off the tire. I would hope that you can get this far. If not, you can search how to change a tire on YouTube and you can learn how to do this. And in my case, I have drum brakes, so I need to break the tire free from the drum. It gets rusted and kind of holds together, so I'm just going to use a hammer, bang on the outside of the tire, and it breaks the tire free. I'm going to take it off. I'm going to set it aside. Alright, I'm coming close. There are 9 total bolts that I'm going to be removing to take the strut off. You'll find this is the case in most vehicles, at least any vehicle I've encountered so far. It's pretty straightforward. So the bolts I'm going to remove are this bolt right here. It's going to remove, I think this is the sway bar link, so it's going to allow me to remove that from the strut. And then I have 2 small bolts here. One removes the brake line from the strut mount, and one removes some wiring for the sensor in the hub from the strut mount. And then I have these 2 main bolts right here. There's 2. These are what kind of hold the strut assembly to the knuckle of the vehicle. So I'm going to be removing those as well. Now I want you to look up in here. You can see my strut, I know, has gone bad. It made clunky noises going over any kind of a bump on the road. But often when the boot wears out on the strut, dirt and grime get along the stem of the strut, and it can cause the seal to leak, or it just causes failure in the strut. So that's going to be the reason why I'm replacing it today. Alright, on the inside of the car there are a few more bolts. I'm going to go over it in a minute, but there's going to be the 3 strut mount bolts, which are going to be hidden underneath the seat here, and then 1 bolt that I need to remove to kind of access those 3 bolts. Depending on your vehicle, the strut mount bolts are either going to be accessible through the interior of the car or the trunk. I can't say which it'll be on yours, but on the Camrys, it's going to be from the interior of the car. Alright, so for the Toyota Camry, I'm going to start off with removing the sway bar link. I'm going to use a size 5 Allen wrench and a size 14 crescent wrench. And the reason why I need to use an Allen wrench, as you can see here, once I break this free, it'll start free spinning. due to the nature of the part. So the center spins along with the nut, which kind of gets me nowhere. So I have this Allen wrench that is sized for the opening. I kind of get it in there, and look at that. Now I'm able to turn the nut, remove it, without the center stem turning as well. All right, now that I've removed the nut, the reason why I removed this first is because right now it's kind of, the vehicle's kind of in place. Nothing's really been altered with the position of the strut assembly, so I should be able to pry this out pretty easily. If I remove some of the other bolts, it kind of wedges this in here and I'm not able to remove it. So there, popped it out. Just used my driving screwdriver and a hammer. And then I will move on to the other small bolts. So I'm going to be using a 10mm bolt to remove the sensor, a 10mm socket. Remove the bolt that holds the sensor onto the strut assembly. Once I loosen it, pretty easy to remove by hand. And then I'm going to go up to a size 12 socket to remove the brake line. So now that I have it loose, I can save a little bit of time. Easy an impact. That's off. Oh, maybe I didn't save time on that one. That slides out of the way. Careful not to manipulate that brake line too much. It can break. So, all right. Now that that's removed, I'm going to upgrade to a breaker bar with a 19mm socket on it. I'm gonna do most of my ratcheting on the side that shows the stem, so I'm going to remove the nut from the bolt. So I'm going to place it on there, and it's going to be pretty tight most likely, so that's why I've used the breaker bar. It gives me extra leverage, and kind of a trick for if you want to use more leverage, you can take a large crescent wrench that's able to fit over the end of your breaker bar, kind of like this, and it gives you even more leverage to break those nuts free. This makes it a little bit easier. So I broke the top free, now the bottom. Use this crescent wrench again. Put some weight into it. Alright, in some instances, you'll have, since this bolt just sticks through the knuckle, it will just free spin when I go to remove the nut. I can fix that by using the appropriate sized crescent wrench on the other side. And then I'm going to, since the nut's already broke free, I can hold that end and remove the nut. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom nut. Now these impacts aren't a requirement, they just make my job a little bit quicker. Alright, so now the fun part is to drive these bolts out. I'm going to just start this nut a little bit to start the process. So I start that on there so I can protect the threads, and then I can take a hammer and just tap on the end of that. And it should break those bolts free to make them easy to drive out. Do the same thing on the bottom. They come pretty easily. And I'm just going to use my screwdriver. And drive them free. This pops out. All right. All right, now I need to access the strut mounts. They're gonna be behind this side cushion here in the car. First step is on the Camry, and honestly, your vehicles might be similar, might be different. There's going to be a bolt down here that I can remove to free up this cushion. It dropped in there, that's all right. All right, so now, since I have that bolt out, I'm gonna pry up, straight up on this cushion, and then it should come out. Show you on the back side here. It's got, that's where the bolt was, and this hook actually hooks in to this mount right here. So that's why I needed to slide it straight up, and then it comes out. All right, now you look in here, you can see this is the center of my strut assembly, and those are the 3 nuts I need to remove. In my case, using a 12mm socket to free up the strut assembly. And it's pretty straightforward. Alright, so I removed the 3 nuts on the strut mount, and this should just come out. Voila. Alright, so here's the new one. These are the new nuts. You feel free to use the ones that come with the strut. I'm going to use the old ones because then it shortens the stem, so I can use that little ratchet in there I found on the last one. That made it really difficult with how long the stems are and how short the nuts are. So just as this slid out, old one slid out, the new one slides in. Should be able to look up in there and line up the holes up top. Now this is the part where a second hand can be helpful. It kind of holds the strut there, so I can go on the top side and I'm just gonna start these nuts. I'm not gonna tighten them. I'm just gonna start them because it keeps some movement in the strut, so I can line the other holes up. So use somebody to kind of hold it there for you while you start the 3 strut mount nuts. All right, once those are in place, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start everything. I'm not gonna tighten it until everything's in place. That way it allows for maneuverability and everything, so I can line the holes up. Start with these big nuts here. It can be difficult to line up the hole, but using a screwdriver, you can pry it in place a little easier. Once you get them started, it should just slide in, or if you need to tap them with a hammer, that works too. This top one's going to be the most difficult bolt because you need to rotate the knuckle up and in. So, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to do it by myself, but otherwise I would use this bottle jack and place it here and just jack up lightly, ensuring that I don't lift the car off of the jack here, just to help me get this in place. But as you may be on your own or not have a bottle jack, you can do it by yourself as well. Alright, so those bolts are in there. I'm just gonna start those nuts. Then I have those 2 small nuts here to line up in the same holes. 2 little small nuts. When I tighten these small ones, I don't need to tighten them overkill. They just need to withstand the vibration of the car. They're not structural by any means, so don't go breaking them off. line this up, slide it in there. Again, it's kind of reverse. I guess not again, it's the first time I'm telling you, but everything's kind of just reverse what you initially did. All right, so the last thing is this here, the sway bar link. As you can see with the new strut, it doesn't line up perfectly, so I can't just slide it in there. There's a couple ways to go about it. First way is, since I already have all these started, I can go on the inside and tighten those strut mount bolts. It'll lift the strut up tight, and it should get me close to lining up. Or I can use this bottle jack, which, for the sake of using the bottle jack, I will show you that method. But either way should work. Also, using the bottle jack will tighten those bolts up top also to make it just a little bit easier to, I can hand tighten them most of the way. All right, so that lined up really nice and easy. I push it through, and voila, everything's hand tightened. I can go ahead and snug everything up. Again, I'm not using these impacts to tighten them all the way. I'm just getting them snug with the impact. And then I'll come back and make sure they're tight with the sockets. All right, so I want to get these strut mount nuts nice and tight. If you don't, you'll have noises when you go down the road because there'll be a little bit of play in there, and it'll make popping sounds as you go over bumps. But all right, so under here I went ahead and used a socket to verify everything was tight as it should be. I no longer need this bottle jack here. I can release it. So if you recall, when I was taking that seat cushion off, I said it was fine that you dropped the bolt. It is fine. It took me a second to remember where it went. But I'll take this cushion, pull the seat belt aside, and again, this might vary on your vehicle that you may be working with. I'm gonna line up the mechanism back there in its place. And slide it down, and there, locked in. Easiest way to get this back in with the seat cushion is I'm gonna remove my socket and extension from the ratchet and place it in. And you're not gonna be able to see what I'm doing, but right this up, line up the holes, out, drop the nut or the bolt off the end of the socket, put it in its place, then attach the ratchet. Tighten it up. Thank you for watching my video. This has been strut assembly replacement on a Toyota Camry or any mid-size sedan. Thanks for watching. Hope you subscribe if you're interested in seeing future videos that I upload onto the YouTube.